Welcome back to App Stories, a show that's all about the world of apps. Today's episode is brought to you by Memberful. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Vitici. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing great. You had such a great idea for today's topic. We are going to talk about hardware ideas that we'd love to see Apple steal. And you may ask, what are you doing talking about hardware on App Stories? Well, you know, hardware is the foundation of every app.
Well, without hardware, you wouldn't have apps. So
Exactly. But before we get to that, Federico, I have a few things that I want to mention. First of all, I would encourage people to check out the Mac Stories YouTube channel, because this last week we launched NPC, Next Portable Console, the show that you and I do with Brendan Bigley, on YouTube. And it's not, it was already, you might say, oh, it was already on YouTube, John. Well, yes, it was, but it was audio only. You could have YouTube ingest your podcast feed and create a little podcast for you, which is just the show art as the video. But no, this is a real edited video of the three of us. You can see our smiling faces as Federico sprung an enormous surprise on us last week that I'm still wrapping my head around.
Yeah, three of them, if you think about it.
Yes. And listeners of Connected would be very interested to know that there was an episode I was on not too long ago where I made a prediction, and one of those predictions came true during that episode of NPC. I don't want to say more because I don't want to influence the future, but this has already happened, and I didn't get any points for it, but I did get some glory. So Mike and Steven know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Anyhow, Federico. So what people can do is just go over to just search for the Mac Stories YouTube channel on YouTube, subscribe, listen to NPC. We've also got all the other shows there. Comfort Zone also does video as well. And the other shows are there as audio only podcasts. So that is my little announcement about YouTube. And I also have a mini topic for you, because I feel like we've had a lot of news about the App Store coming out recently from Apple. And I want to cover this relatively quickly because, honestly, I'm a little tired of all the back and forth with the EU and with how App Store fees work and who can do what and how they can link. But it is an important topic. And I think that it's because the show is about apps, we really ought to talk about it a little bit. And I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, for instance, on how the fee structure works now if you link out to a web page in order to sell someone something. But what Apple has effectively done is removed most of the limitations on linking out to a web page to sell someone something. But at the same time, they have required that anyone who does that, any developer who does that in their app, has to pay fees. And those fees, when you add them all up, are approaching what the existing App Store fees are. Now, I know it's much more complicated than that, but I think it's fair to say that they approach the 30% that was there. And not only is it that they have to pay those fees, but that fee is due from any customer who uses one of those links within and buys something within a full year thereafter, which is incredible to me. That's the part that really gets me, because I think you and I are very well versed in the affiliate linking world, just because we run a website, and I at one time wrote an app about affiliate linking. Mm-hmm. And to give people an idea, an Amazon affiliate link, if you use those, it lasts, it sets a cookie on your browser, and it lasts for 24 hours. That means if I link to something, if I link to, the latest gaming handheld on Mac Stories, and I use an affiliate link and someone clicks on it, they have to buy that console or some other item within the next 24 hours in order for us to get even a teeny tiny little fee out of that. And it's very small with Amazon in particular. That's as compared to Apple, which is taking an approaching 30% fee over the next full year. Amazon is in the range of like 3 to 5%, depending on what's being bought. And even Apple's own affiliate program, which still exists, not for apps anymore, but for things like Apple Music and TV Plus, that is a 30-day cookie. So if we were to link to an Apple Music subscription and someone bought an Apple Music subscription, within the next 30 days, we would get a commission. Again, far smaller than 30%, but only within the next 30 days. So that's just to give people a little bit of a taste for the difference between what Apple is insisting on and what I think is a little bit more common in the affiliate world. Because I do feel like this is, in a sense, an affiliate type of situation, because what Apple is effectively saying is that you put a link in an app on our that comes from our store, you owe us money because it came from our store.
Yeah, I honestly don't know what to say anymore. This whole thing has been exhausting. Is my perspective.
It makes me very tired to even talk about it here.
I don't even. I honestly don't. I don't even know. I don't even know. Like, I think they're making this way too hard. Like, we're having this week, the conversation was that finally these companies can show a price in their sign-up pages. Like, we're literally talking about showing a price. This was the entire discourse this week, and using links. Like, we have come to the point where we're talking about showing a dollar amount and having a clickable link.
It's ridiculous.
All these lawyers getting paid and all these people getting so caught up for showing like $15 with a clickable link.
Yeah.
I think it's wild.
Well, and it went from that, which was kind of wild, to the whole Patreon situation, which is really disappointing to see, because Patreon charges its the people offering memberships a fee to use their platform, and Apple for years has allowed Patreon to offer those membership subscriptions in their iOS app without taking a piece of the subscription price. And they decided they weren't going to do that anymore, that they're going to insist that Patreon pay the 30% and pass that, along to Apple. And the thing that gets me about this one, I've always wondered why Patreon was different, because it always struck me as a situation like this seemed like the kind of thing where Apple would try to take the 30%, but they didn't. And what to me really bothers me is that they just let it go for so long, and now it's got to change. And the problem with that is Patreon and all these people who are offering memberships on Patreon have built businesses around this for years. And Patreon's billing system is not the same as the in-app purchase system on the App Store, which means Patreon is literally having to force its customers to change the way they run their membership programs in order to conform to the App Store, or risk having that app thrown off the App Store. Now, I've never been really a Patreon iOS user myself. I've always used the web with Patreon for whatever reason, but I'm sure that a lot of people, that's their main interface to Patreon. And I guess that's why Apple feels they're entitled to the fee. But this one just really rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah. I think it's one of the most disappointing things that Apple has done lately. And I don't want to rehash the conversation that we've had on Connected with Mike and Steven this week, where we talked about it. I'm very disappointed by Apple trying to squeeze every single possible cent out of a company that's designed to allow creators around the world to share their art with an audience, and Apple trying to put themselves in the middle of that relationship. I think it's very gross and unbecoming of them. And so, I find it very disappointing. Just like I mentioned on Connected how lately I've been feeling like there are two Apples, within the same company, and increasingly it feels that way. There's the Apple that I love, that cares about design, that builds hardware products, that designs the software that I like, and
Right.
creates technologies that enable developers to make third-party apps. And there's the Apple that I don't like, the one that's dealing with regulation in the European Union right now, how they're dealing with it, the company that how they manage App Store and developer relations. It almost feels like a separate entity, and I kind of wonder. Like lately, I've been rethinking the idea of like that. I saw some U.S. politicians surface in the past, like, hey, maybe it wouldn't be so bad after all to break up the company, because it does feel it already feels like that, and maybe there's an argument to be made that the Apple that deals with services should be a separate entity from the company that builds the phone and designs the operating system. Just a thought that I had. I know that many people are going to disagree with this, especially in the US. But I really dislike that part of Apple and how they've been behaving in the past year, especially.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're seeing the results of the size of the company is such that the hardware doesn't offer enough growth anymore because so many people have an iPhone around the world, for instance. And the wonderful thing about subscription revenue is that it's basically 100% profit. And so I think we're seeing kind of a bit of an addiction to that from a corporate standpoint, which is a shame. And I think at the end of the day, from an app perspective on this, I think this is only going to drive more and more developers away from the App Store, because just the notion, I can't even imagine to be one of the kind of developers that we tend to cover, the indie developers, trying to offer some sort of service or something that is purchased outside the App Store and doing one of these links and having to do all the accounting to even comply with these rules if they ultimately stick. I think it's just going to drive people away from even making those sorts of experiences.
Yeah.
All right, Federico, before we get to the main topic, I want to encourage people to think about joining Club Mac Stories. We are going to talk about this today because you know what? Club Mac Stories is a pretty cool thing that we do that fans of this show and fans of what we do at Mac Stories, I think, get a lot out of, because it's both a way to support what we do day to day, but you get a lot of extra benefits from it too. And, that starts with our newsletters. It starts with a weekly newsletter called Mac Stories Weekly. We also do a monthly one called the Monthly Log, both of which are packed full of more coverage of apps, automations, columns, recommendations for hardware and other software. A lot goes into that every week. I mean, I would say, having been the one who's produced every one of these since roughly the 25th issue, they tend to be in the 4,000 to 6,000 word range each week. And then the monthly log, we also, do that, which is just a little extra one at the end of the month, where usually it's me and Federico, but sometimes other authors come in and we do a column for that as well. And then on top of that, we have a Discord server, which is a great community of smart people talking about all sorts of things. Apps is obviously a big topic, so is automation. But media, whether it's books or movies or video games, all that stuff, that's for Club Mac Stories Plus subscribers. And you can get the extended version of this show that comes out early every week by joining the top tier of Club Mac Stories, which is Club Premier. And that gives you the extended version of App Stories. And we did a great pre-show today all about things like the Vision Pro and a little behind the scenes about our work on YouTube. So those are just a few of the things we do. Obviously, we do more special things at certain times of the year, like when we have the reviews come out. Federico does his ebook version of his iOS review. I do an ebook version of the macOS review. And I don't know, Federico, there's a lot of other things. But if you go to plus.club, you can learn more about what is available in each of the tiers, and we'd love you to check it out and support us if you can.
Yeah.
All right, Federico, let's dive into hardware that we think that Apple ought to steal. This was your idea for a topic, and I loved it because, you and I think, have been experimenting an awful lot with non-Apple hardware over the last, year or two. And I think there's a reason for that. I think Apple's getting complacent in the hardware realm. I'm just going to throw that hot take out there right now, is that I think As we've said in the past, Apple needs to get weird. And where better to do that than experimenting with hardware? And so we've got some ideas that we're going to share, things they can do with existing products, but maybe some other things that don't exist yet that we want to see.
I think that is absolutely the perspective that I had. I think, I don't believe I'm alone in feeling this way, that, except for the Vision Pro, which is a very niche and very expensive device,
Yep.
like we've been using the same types of iPhones and iPads and computers in the Apple ecosystem for such a long time. And when you look beyond the Apple ecosystem and you look at things like e-readers or foldable devices, glasses, obviously video game handhelds, different ideas and designs for earbuds. There's a lot of innovation happening in hardware beyond the Apple ecosystem. But the thing is, it's always tricky for people like us to approach those devices because we are so entrenched within the Apple ecosystem when it comes to, our Apple accounts, iCloud,
Right.
the third-party apps we like using. That's not to say that it's impossible to break out of the Apple ecosystem and use different types of devices. But the thing is, we're not being held hostage by anybody. I just happen
Right.
to like iOS and iPadOS, and I just happen to like apps that are exclusive to those platforms. And so it's always tricky to find. For example, I could get a Pixel 9 Pro Fold, but I know that I'm not really going to take advantage of it because I am not so bought into the Android ecosystem or the
Right.
Google
Right.
account ecosystem. That said, though, that was my idea. Like, what if Apple could get a little bit weird with hardware? What are the ideas that I think Apple should steal? And for me, the most important one for me is a foldable device, a foldable phone. Specifically, like lately we've been seeing these rumors of like, oh, Apple is gonna make a foldable Mac. No, actually they're gonna make a foldable tablet first. But I am convinced that the first foldable device I want to see from Apple is a folding iPhone. Specifically, I am really into the idea of a pocketable device. That's why I'm thinking about a phone. I'm not thinking about a laptop that folds open and you have two screens. I'm not thinking about an iPad that folds open and it goes from 10 inches to 20 inches. I'm thinking about something that you can put in your pocket. Now, obviously, you cannot put a laptop, you cannot put a 10-inch tablet in your pocket. I'm thinking about an iPhone that you put in your pocket, and maybe it's a little bit thicker, and I wouldn't mind. But then when, and you can go about your day and just use it as a phone, with one hand, use it as an iPhone. But then if you're sitting down, and instead of having to use something like an iPad mini, or arguably even like a 10-inch, 11-inch iPad Pro, you could just fold it open. And now suddenly you have an 8-inch or 9-inch, different aspect ratio for sure, but you have an iPhone that sort of becomes this hybrid in between an iPhone and an iPad. And I think Apple, of all companies, with the sort of ecosystem that they have and the third-party developer ecosystem that they have between the iPhone and iPad, and the way iPhone and iPad apps are designed, I think they could do an incredible job creating this sort of device that seamlessly reflows from one aspect ratio to another. And that is absolutely the sort of thing I want Apple to seal.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that we are getting there technologically, given what we saw this week from Google, because what's really unique about their latest foldable is that the phone that unfolded, it's significantly thinner than in the past. So we're starting to get to the point where folded, it's approaching a normal phone thickness. Now, yes, it is still thicker, but it's a lot more pocketable in that sense than they were, a couple of years ago or a few years ago. So I think that the technology is definitely getting there. I also think it's really interesting whether you approach this from it's a phone that unfolds or it's a tablet that folds up. And I think for this, I would prefer that it be the kind of size that you're describing, which is maybe it's a little thicker, maybe it's a little bigger, but it's still pocketable. It's still within the realm of an iPhone size, a big iPhone size when it's folded in half. But I would want to see Apple take it from the perspective of the tablet first, the experience with it unfolded, because I'd really want that unfolded experience to be a full first-class iPad-style experience with all the things that are unique to the iPad that come with that, and a phone second. Obviously, you would want it to have want to have it to have mobile networking so you could make phone calls with it and connect to the internet and all that sort of thing. But I would really, to me, I would have that device. I would throw it in my pocket. I would throw it in my bag, whatever I do. I would have like a slim keyboard that I would carry with me in my bag. And I would sit down at a coffee table. I would unfold that thing. There'd be a kickstand on the back, Federico. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but there'd be a kickstand on the back, and I would get that keyboard out, and I would just start typing, and I would be able to do everything that I do on my iPad Pro today. But then when I get up and leave, and I'm maybe going out to dinner with my family, whatever it happens to be, I still have the ability to pull that out of my pocket and check if someone important is texting me, or see the notification from the email, whatever it happens to be. That to me is kind of the ideal way to approach this.
Yeah, and if Apple's concern is all about like, if we release this type of device, it's gonna cannibalize sales of either the iPhone or the iPad. Make it super expensive. Make it cost double. Like just roll the prices of two devices into one. I would. I'm just
look at
this.
Google. I look at what Google did. It starts at $1,800.
No, but even like I would be way happier giving Apple $3,000 for this device than I did with the Vision Pro. Like, just make it super premium, very high end, very like futuristic, whatever. Like, I'll give you the money. Just give me the dream of an iPhone that turns into a small iPad.
Right, because it would be useful in all sorts of contexts, and that's why it would be worth the money. It would be that you could be using it at your desk, you could be using it while you're sitting at a table, whatever it is. You could, it would be like having the iPad and the iPhone with you at all times, which would be great.
Yeah. Speaking of the iPad, is there anything you want Apple to steal from other tablets?
Yeah, I would like to see Apple experiment with something like the Surface and the detachable keyboard thing that they.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say a kickstand.
No, I don't think that I'm maybe not as big of a kickstand boy as you, but except for maybe with the Foldable. But I do feel like it would be. I like the idea of a keyboard that houses Mac OS a little bit in the style of your MacPad, and being able to connect those two things together and have the choice of using either the iPad or an iPad OS or Mac OS. I don't know. That's one that I don't think Apple will ever do, but I think it's an interesting concept to have the optionality of working in either system with you all the time.
Yeah. From the Surface personally, I really like the idea of the built-in keyboard that you attach to the Surface. You can also detach it and use it standalone because it's got Bluetooth. And that's the sort of thing that I was hoping Apple would do this with the new Magic Keyboard for the M4 iPad Pro. And they didn't. And I think ultimately, I know that it leads to you purchasing a separate keyboard for something like a Vision Pro. But if you think about it, it also leads to e-waste because you're just keep piling on devices after devices and accessory upon accessory, where I would just like to have one keyboard that I switch in between my Mac, my iPad, and the Vision Pro. And instead, now I have to use my Mac keyboard. Sure, my Mac keyboard I can control multiple devices, but the Magic Keyboard for iPad, which is $400, when the iPad is not connected to it, it's useless. It's just a keyboard that doesn't have a battery, doesn't run a separate operating system, doesn't have Bluetooth, so I cannot use it with the Vision Pro. I'm obviously very into a scenario in which the keyboard is the computer, like the keyboard has macOS built in, but I think I would also just be happy if the iPad's Magic Keyboard had Bluetooth as a fallback, or something like Universal Control as a fallback.
Yeah, well, and I think that that's a theme that we've talked about in the past, which is Apple has this great technology that's layered on top of Bluetooth that they use with the AirPods Pro, all the AirPods for that matter, and the ability to do easy switching between devices and, multi-pairing and all that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing I've always wanted to see trickle down to keyboards, trackpads, mice, a game controller. There's a lot there where I think the peripherals could be a lot smarter than they are today, which would allow you to use one keyboard with multiple things and also allow them to do tasks and have features that just aren't available in a dumb keyboard right now.
We're going to talk about the Mac in just a second, but when the Mac lineup is refreshed later this year, and supposedly Apple is going to introduce new peripherals, if they don't have USB-C and multi-device pairing, I'm shocked, wouldn't even describe how I would feel about it.
I'm still holding out. I've got an older Magic Keyboard at my desk, and the keys are all shiny and gross, and the thing is dying. But
actually, as an update, just this happened yesterday, like literally yesterday. Yeah. I also went back to the old Lightning-based Magic Keyboard and Magic Trackpad on my desk because I realized for those times when I want to play with my with the eGPU at the desk on Windows with either the Legion Go or the ROG Ally X, I'm just gonna. I bought this USB-A dongle that it turns the one USB port that I have in my USB hub on my desk into two USB-A ports, and I got two old USB-A to Lightning cables. So when I'm sitting down at my desk, I'm just gonna get this dongle out. And it's got the Lightning cables permanently attached. So I'm just gonna use the keyboard and trackpad wired with Windows.
How do we live in the world where that's a good solution at this point?
I know, right? It's crazy. But
I understand why you're doing it, but you shouldn't live in a world where you have to do that in 2024. I'm just saying.
So I guess this is also something they should steal. Multi-connectivity for peripherals with, at the very least, like even if Apple doesn't want to support Bluetooth, like multi-point or with like Android or PCs or whatever, just at the very least let the new Magic Keyboard and Magic Trackpad, or even if they are refreshing the Magic Mouse, like let them pair with multiple Apple devices with the same technique that you're using with AirPods.
Logitech figured that out over a decade ago, I think, at this point. I mean, it's not hard. Lots of keyboards do this. And I know, yes, they have buttons for it, or they have a switch. And maybe that didn't fit with the aesthetic back in Johnny Ives' day. But let's put a button on there. Let's put a switch on there, whatever it happens to be, and make it happen. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Memberful. Memberful is best-in-class membership software used by the web's biggest creators, publishers, and media companies. So if you're building a membership website for a client, Memberful can handle all of the hard stuff so you can complete your builds quickly and your clients can focus on creating content while earning revenue with ease. Memberful protects members-only content and allows site owners to select which subscribers get access to protected areas of your website using server-side content protection. It seamlessly integrates with WordPress and features a host of shortcodes and built-in WordPress functions, so you can insert dynamic links and integrate Memberful data with your WordPress theme. We've been using Memberful for years at Mac Stories, really ever since Club Mac Stories began, and we started with newsletters, but then we branched out to use Memberful to become the engine for all sorts of things that we do at the club, like our Discord membership. It manages who's in the Discord and who's not. Plus, Memberful has built-in connections for popular tools like MailChimp, as I mentioned, Discord, and Google Analytics, so site owners can reach and monetize their existing audiences without rebuilding their entire tech stack. With Memberful, your clients always have full control and ownership over their audience and their brand. The software also maintains a GraphQL API, webhooks, and OAuth single sign-on to make integration even easier. Memberful has everything your client will need to run a membership program, including a streamlined and powerful checkout system, an easy-to-use member portal, transactional emails, and member management dashboard. Memberful's analytics also give your clients an easy-to-use, in-depth view of what's working, what's not, and what you should double down on. Help your clients monetize their passion. Get started for free at memberful.com/appstories. That's memberful.com/appstories. Visit memberful.com/appstories today to learn more. Our thanks to Memberful for their support of the show.
All right. So what do you want to see on the Mac side?
Oh boy. All right. So I wrote about this for Mac Stories Weekly this past week for club members. I am excited about a Mac Mini. I'm both apprehensive and excited about a new Mac Mini. Now, that's obviously been rumored. And the rumors say that it would be in the realm, it'd be closer to the size of an Apple TV than its current form factor. And I like that. What makes me apprehensive is that I don't want to lose my peripherals. I don't want to lose all the inputs and outputs in the back of the computer, because right now, if you buy a high-end Mac Mini, the ports on the back are effectively the same as a Mac Studio. Mac Studio will give you some things on the front, including the SD card slot and a couple of more USB-C ports. But I think I would move to a Mac Mini for my next desktop if it didn't lose any ports. And I'm a little concerned with a smaller Mac Mini potentially losing ports. Now, there are always third-party solutions for this. There have always been hubs that have been built that are shaped like a Mac Mini, and you can stack them. But I'd like to see Apple kind of do that for once. I'd like to see that peripheral, that accessory come from Apple itself and do some things to optimize that combination and allow the Mac Mini to become more of an even more flexible tool by giving it the expandability of a custom base that would be a Thunderbolt, hopefully 5 hub. And I would even go so far as to wish for a Mac Mini that could be powered by an external battery pack.
Yeah.
So the Mac Mini could be something you throw in your backpack and take to a coffee shop, hook it up to a battery, a GAN charging, battery pack, and use it with a portable display, because I think Apple should figure out a portable display solution and allow it to be used for all sorts of things. You could build an Apple TV into it and allow AirPlay. You could use it just for a secondary display with a laptop. You could use it with this Mac Mini, I'm imagining. There's a lot of things you could do, and the technology is finally getting there. With Thunderbolt 5, there's enough throughput that Apple could do a high resolution, high refresh rate OLED display, and potentially even a folding one. That one that we talked about months and months ago from Asus hasn't come out yet. That it was announced at CES in January. And I think at the time it was quoted that it was going to be $3,500, which is kind of a ridiculously high price. It was in the nosebleeds with the Vision Pro, and it was just a display that was like about the size of a 13-inch laptop. And then when it was unfolded, it was 20 some inches diagonally. But yeah, that to me, I think it would be really cool to see a Mac Mini become not only almost like a puck-like thing that you could throw in a server rack or in a closet, but also something that tucks neatly. You could attach it to the back of your studio display, or you could throw it in your bag and take it with you. That's kind of the dream for me from a portable Mac standpoint, because it's even more flexible than a laptop at that point.
Yeah, the dream for me right now is also like a very small Mac Mini, and thankfully it seems to be coming true.
Yeah,
I'm in the market for a Mac upgrade later this year, especially like since we're doing now things with video, and
you need a little horsepower for that.
I need a little horsepower. I could do it with the iPad Pro, with the M4 iPad Pro, but the operating system doesn't let me do it.
That's really what I mean, because the M4 is fully capable of the kind of video you need, but you have issues with like doing video and audio and
I need to be able to. Yeah, I need to be able to have Zoom going, a Zoom call, also a video recording going from my connected camera at the same time. I need to record the audio separately. I need a Mac for that. The
Right.
iPad won't let me do it. And the M2 MacBook Air, well, half of it, which is still perfectly functional, but it's showing its time now. And so, for example, you cannot handle like doing 4K video recording and audio and a bunch of Safari tabs open at the same time. So I'm in the market for a new Mac later this year, and because I don't want to, you know me, I like things to be as small as possible if I can. So obviously, the new Mac Mini, sort of Apple TV size Mac Mini, I mean, sign me up. So that's sort of the thing that I guess I want Apple to steal from itself, right? Steal from the Apple TV and turn it into a Mac Mini. The other thing that I want Apple to steal, this will never happen, since support for this feature was unfortunately dropped years ago with the transition to Apple Silicon. I would love Apple to steal from Windows and restore support for eGPUs on the Mac.
That'd be great.
I don't think I think that ship has sailed, but that doesn't stop me from wishing it,
Well, that would be part
again.
Yeah, I mean, that would be something that I would throw into my little expansion base. I would have, a port for an eGPU on there and even expanded memory, because if you're talking Thunderbolt 5, it's going to open up all sorts of new possibilities for peripherals, I think.
Yeah. All right. So we have I guess we have a grab bag of other things that we would like Apple to steal. So can you give me your list, John, of things that you haven't mentioned?
All right. There are a bunch of them here. I think that Apple hasn't figured out speakers yet, and that there is room for a sound bar that is also an Apple TV and has Siri built into it. I think that I do think that a sound bar is still a good idea. Instead of having a pair of HomePods sitting on your entertainment center, why not have a sound bar that can either be put on that entertainment center or attached to the bottom of the TV, and have all that great sound coming from it, as well as the functionality of the Apple TV and that kind of thing, and kind of clean up that whole look. I think that would be a nice thing to have, although at this point, having not done it, I do wonder whether it's actually ever going to come at this point.
Yeah. Is Apple going after Sonos, basically, is what you're saying.
How hard could it be? Sonos is like self-owning themselves these days. I mean, literally, they laid off, it's very sad, they laid off 100 people just the other day. I read that. And part of that comes down to this app that was such a disaster. I mean, I don't know why people were... I shouldn't share my Sonos hot takes because people are so into Sonos, and I've never liked the app, even the old
people
version.
Are into Sonos. People are really into Sonos.
Oh, you hear about it when you talk about Sonos, and
it's something that we have learned over time.
It is not. I have not joined that fan club yet, but I do have some Sonos products. They do sound great, but boy, that company seems to be having some troubles lately, and I would think that Apple could really take it to them right now.
Yeah. I'm just looking at my list. I have two things that they should steal from other companies, and more things that they should steal from themselves elsewhere in the lineup. More specifically, I want to see an OLED iPad mini. So a very small iPad that steals the display from the iPad Pro. Incredible display, but just give it to me on the iPad mini. And an iPhone with the same nano texture display option as the iPad Pro. So
put it on everything, Federico. Why stop
put it
with
on
the
everything?
iPhone?
Again, let me pay more. I'm gonna give you so much money for a nano texture iPhone. You have no idea. And I want Apple to steal from, I don't recall which company it is, that somebody made a wireless earbuds, and the case has a little display on it. And so I
remember that. Yeah.
I would love Apple to have an AirPods case with a little display, maybe even an OLED display, that shows me things like the battery life percentage, maybe the sound modes that are currently active on the AirPods, maybe even, I don't know, maybe it's even a touch screen and lets me cycle between different EQ settings. Put an Apple spin on it or something. Just a little display that gives me... AirPods are increasingly becoming, teeny tiny computers that you put in your ears. Just treat them as such, give me a display that has a case that has more information about them. And lastly, obviously, steal from Meta and give me Apple glasses. They don't have to be, like, literally what I want is the Apple version of the Meta Ray-Bans. They don't need to be spatial computers. They just need to be glasses that are regular glasses that I put on my face, are relatively fashionable, have a camera that lets me save photos and videos, and they go into the Apple Photos app, and that reads me notifications, that plays audio. And maybe these glasses, they could be paired with an iPhone, but they could also be paired with an Apple Watch, which is something that you cannot easily do with the Meta Ray-Bans. Just give me the Apple version of this product without having to make me wait years for glasses to also project UI in front of my eyes. I don't want that. I just want glasses with a camera and speakers. Please.
Yeah, and look, Apple figured out the speakers with the Apple Vision Pro, right? That technology has been created already. They've figured out how to have really good sound. Now, yes, those stems on the Vision Pro are a little chunky for a pair of glasses, but they're part way there. They ought to just move that into a regular pair of glasses. I agree. I think wearables is a place that there's a lot of opportunities that Apple seems kind of stuck with the Apple Watch. And I love my Apple Watch, but let's try glasses. Let's try the Ring thing. I mean, I don't know. I probably wouldn't buy a Ring if it didn't do anything more than the watch, but maybe they can do more with the Ring. Maybe the finger is a better place for certain kind of sensors, or maybe it just is one of those things that allows me to take my watch off at night and charge it at night and then let the Ring take over, whatever it happens to be. But I think especially with the fitness push that Apple has with the Ultra and even just the standard Apple Watch, a Ring, maybe some kind of chest strap sensor. There's this company Whoop out there that does kind of high-end athletic sensors that are being can be tucked into various pieces of clothing on your body that do all kinds of sensing of your heart rate and your pulse and all kinds of other things. I don't know. That's another place where let's get a little weird and try something different. All right, Federico. Well, I think that we've given Apple a few things to do. This would be a good focus. Get away from the fee part of this. Let's not focus on the services for a little while. We're okay there. Let's move on and make some really good hardware. And I think we should try these new things. And if anybody needs some more detail at Apple, any of those designers or hardware engineers, Federico and I are available on a consulting basis. Our fee, unfortunately, is very, very high.
Little high, but we can cut a deal.
We can make time for the right price, is what we're saying.
Yeah. I mean, we're not as we're pretty easy to work with, easier for sure than the European Union. So
we're cheaper than your lawyers, Apple. So you got that.
Yes. Yeah.
There's that.
There's that. Just putting it out there.
All right, Tichi, it's good to talk to you. I want to thank our sponsor again for this episode. That is Memberful. You can find us over at macstories.net. We are on Mastodon. Just go to vitici.macstories.net and johnvorhees.macstories.net to follow us there. And you can find us on Threads and Instagram, where Federico is at Vitici. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.